to have you join. And again, so much gratitude and kudos, frankly, for having the courage to step up to one of these crazy experiments.
Looking forward to it.
I think that's at the core of what we do here at Project Kin is like, I don't know, let's find out what happens.
I'm sorry about my picture, by the way. I've tried cleaning the camera lens, but I'm a kind of soft focus, but hey,
We call that the beauty filter.
that's the one. That's the one.
And I know it's actually not just that, but it's the middle of the night. It's well,
Well, it's
in my
10 o'clock, so it's nearly bedtime.
to my bedtime, it is afterwards, as my friends will know. After 8 o'clock, I just can't be counted on. But I'm all in for those 7 a.m. phone calls if we need to do that with Europe.
Is it already Monday for some of you guys?
It is indeed. For hello, Jane, chiming in from New Zealand, from Wellington. So yes,
Happy
this
Monday.
is one of the fun things about, well, the clock. I like to think that if the world had been considering global time as I guess it was the rails that
Mhm.
made people really think about the concept of time zones around the planet, that they would have thought to put California for a central mean time, because we reach in both directions more easily than you do from London. But
Greenwich,
hey,
yeah.
the study of history is kind of why we do what we do, and it ends up becoming what we do.
Yeah.
Some of which we see with history happening everywhere. Hello, everyone. It's a thrill to have you joining. I think, we do these live programs, we do lots of different ways. And I think there is something really special about this kind of live program. And I'm very pleased with it as a way to connect as members. So I know it's also hard to type into your phone. I know if I do, I'm going to jiggle the phone. So I won't be typing, but feel free to thank you, Kathy. Feel free to ask a question or anything else. We are the transcript of what you say does not get saved with the recording. So I will repeat anything that appears up there so that it is picked up in the recording. I am thrilled to be joined today by Janet Barrie, who is the chair for the Society for One Place Studies. And I met Janet, of course, as part of the All About That Place series. I first heard about a couple of years ago with the very first episode and was smitten and was saying to myself, gosh, why can't we do that? We have a big places, lots of big places out here, out west, out toward the Pacific, not the United States, but all of the Americas, all
Mhm.
the way across the Pacific. How come there's only a couple of things about us? Then last year we got to be included in the All About That Place series, which of course just had me really thinking about the structure of one place studies. And Janet Few's fabulous book. That structure, I think, is something that we can all learn from in all forms of the family history work that we do. So I was thrilled when Janet Barrie said yes, when I reached out to ask if she would be so gracious as to do a talk for us. And she suggested a two-part talk. So let me just pause right there and let you tell us.
Okay, yes. So, as Barbara said, I'm the chair for the Society of One Place Studies. And after Barbara contacted me, we chatted how best to make the 10 steps of Janet Few's book, which is excellent, by the way. I thoroughly recommend it. You can get a paper copy or you can get Kindle. And I'm not taking commission from her, but she also has the second edition of her also excellent, Putting Your Ancestors in Their Place, which is now available on Kindle, that is more worldwide focus than her first volume, which was very UK. Anyway, Barbara and I started chatting about the 10 steps that Janet outlines in the book Barbara's been waving. And we felt that would fit best into 2 sessions. 10 is quite a lot to cover in one session if we're going to have any kind of discussion whatsoever. And I really, really hope we do. This does work well as a workshop, and I'm hoping to get some ideas from you as you chat about your places as well. Um, more than two, partly there's a problem of making them all, and partly there's the fact that I don't own the copyright to Janet Few's book, so there's a limit to how deeply I can plunge it. So although the outline is hers, the examples are mine, many of them.
That's it is all about making it your own, and the book is so accessible, so readily available for anyone anywhere in the world, and certainly the English language world, to be able to cut into this. And thank you, Kathy, great tip. I absolutely will be including links to the books in the recording notes, and to me that's one of the key benefits of doing those kinds of recording notes. And one of the things that I just love, and you're being very modest about, is the notion of this society for one place studies, in the sense of there's a lot of functions that you provide in doing that, given the nature of place studies. At least a place does change over time and, of course, over history. But generally speaking, I think in most cases, a place doesn't exactly move.
Some of I
And
do actually.
so tell us about that.
Yeah. So yes, most places, most for our studies, a place doesn't exactly move, but there is a couple of people who've registered a ship, and they're doing the history of the ship, the crew, and the passengers, where he sailed from and to, and
Yeah.
what she carried if she was a cargo ship. And so yes, sometimes our places do move, but you're right, most of them are pretty stationary. But just because they're stationary doesn't mean they're static, of course. People come, people go, people are born, people die, industries develop, um, housing is developed, new inventions, new techniques are brought into the community, and all those impact how people live their daily lives. And then, of course, they're also impacted at local level by the national events. So the big things that happen in your countries in the national
Mhm.
stage will have had an impact on the life of the people that live in our places. And for me, a lot of the fun is working out how that actually affected life at local level. How did the
Yeah.
people in our place vote in a particular election, for example, or how did life change when the telephone came? That kind of stuff.
Right. And I keep talking about structure. Perhaps that's just the way my mind works. But to me, the structure of one place studies allows me to realize how unstructured so many of us are in how we go about our own family history, or really that we're groping for new and different ways to look at things. The structure that we're accustomed to is the structure of a family tree for a accept a 19th century eye view of what made a family. And as we
Mhm.
know, for starters, there's lots of different ways, both biologically
Mhm.
and through adoptions and surrogacy and other sorts of relationships, that families get a lot more complicated than what they told us about. And coming circling back to one place studies allows for a rigor and care of looking at some of those kinds of things. One of the things that struck me as I got going here with Project Kin was the worldview from the perspective of places where people migrated to and
Mhm.
from the places where someone might be talking about a place where their family has lived for 400 years of documented history. For us, we're lucky if we have any kind of evidence that our family came here or where they were 400 years ago. But most of us have presence in a given location. I don't know if I could say most of us, actually. Myself, we've lived in one house for 30 years, which is amazing to me. It is mind blowing to me. And that is, it creates such a different worldview. I think migrations is another topic that I
Yeah.
am really interested in, especially if there were a way to go about it with a structure, like you have from this one place study. Is that something that you've given much thought to in the context of one place studies?
Yes, my study started when, as a house study, really, when I realised that 5 generations of my family had lived in my house. and the sixth has played in the garden but never actually slept there. Now that only goes back about 100 years. It's not as far back as you think, but the house is pretty much part of our family as much as the ancestors are. Back to migration. Yes, that's one of the things that's often studied in people doing a one place study. And probably about 8 years ago now, the Society did do what we call the shared endeavour on migration. So a lot of people, we put questions and prompts and resources on the Society website. And a lot of people worked through those in relation to their own places. So you can look at it, as family historians, we look at families, we look at individuals, but you can also gather the census data and look at it at a population level. Was
Mhm.
your community getting bigger? Was it getting smaller? Was it old people moving in, young people moving out, young people moving in? Where did they come from? And what was their motivation for leaving that place and coming to ours?
Mhm.
Where did they go to? And the same questions in reverse. Why did they leave and where did they go to and why there? And back to Janet Few again, her one place study started largely from her PhD work when she was plotting the migration of the Bible Christians from Devon to Canada. And you
Oh,
could trace
fascinating.
how different members of the extended family community went over there bit by bit by bit. And so, yeah, migration is a big topic. A lot of people, I mean, pardon me, our previous treasurer, Alex, lives in Auckland.
Oh,
And yeah, and she
Oakland,
studied
California?
Auckland, New Zealand.
Oh, Auckland. Mhm.
Yeah. And she studied a place in Buckinghamshire, England, where a lot of her ancestors came from. And so some of our, particularly Down Under members, study places in Australia and New Zealand,
Right.
but a lot will study places back in the UK that was their ancestral starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's an area that I just find so fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about how you the project you did a few years ago. In fact, one of the other things that blew me away about the society when I first learned some more about it was this map that you use as a way of bringing that kind of collaboration again, and the idea that when you talk about a surname, finding that one surname, they're spelled so many ways, and multiple people with the same name who are not, in fact, in any near time generation related. But place, by longitude latitude, tends to remain the same place, and you have a map to do that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You mean the map that shows where all our studies are
Registration,
registered? Yeah,
registration of a study.
yeah. So on the website, if you look on the studies page, there is a map which shows where all our studies are registered. In the UK, because the majority of them are UK based, we have that broken down by county. Although,
Hmm.
if you know Yorkshire, there's some creative counties in there. And overseas, it's mainly by country. I think they're all by country. Um, and yeah, so you can look at who has registered studies in a particular area of interest. So mine is a small area in East Lancashire, but by going on the map, I can see that 5 or 6 other people or other studies have been registered within, say, a 10-15 mile geographical area and
Hmm.
can contact those people. There's alias email addresses on the website, so everybody's contactable
Hmm.
and say, "Hi, I'm looking at a place 5 miles down the road from you. Um, do you want a coffee if you're local?" And we've met up sometimes. But also, have I got any stuff that might be of interest to you? Have you got any stuff that might be of interest to me? What do you want me to look out for?
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking at my town, quite often records for the next town will pop up. And it shows the work that way. And the
Yeah.
collaboration aspect of it. Many of us are in local history societies, but many of us are ploughing our own furrow. And it's
Hmm.
good to be able to reach out to others locally or otherwise who are also engaged in similar work.
Hmm. Well, I think that that kind of collaborative nature, as you know, I'm a bit of a nerd and have always been interested in the ways in which we use these different platforms to accomplish our objectives. I have a bias here. My fundamental bias is that we need to be independent of platforms, and start with the problem you're trying to solve first, then go find the best way to do that, which is why I'm often asking so many questions about how you're doing something, where you're going about it, and how you're getting it done. We've seen over and over again how important it is to know what people are going to do with the information that they take from us. Things like that, and then ways in which to use them independently. That's a topic I'm going to continue to pick up. We had a platform, the push and pull of platforms conversation we started back at the beginning of January, this time again with two speakers from the Pacific Rim, with uh, two speakers that came in from Australia and New Zealand, picking up on questions of how they were working with their WordPress and we are.xyz, and how to combine them to accomplish what they were trying to do. In that case, it was Jennifer Jones in Australia and Jane Chapman in Wellington, New Zealand. And now, as a matter of fact, just earlier this week, Jane has taken her one place study that she's built out in we are.xyz, building and continuing to add to that archive on the one place study component of we are.xyz, but now using Substack for what Substack's good for, which is
Yeah.
as a newsletter, as an engagement platform. And I don't know how this is all going to work, but it sounds like a really good idea to me.
And it's
And
true for purposes, isn't it? That there isn't one platform, one mode of communication that will reach all the people you want to reach all of the time. And one thing that's of interest is the number of people in our registered studies that are still working towards printed books
mhm,
and leaflets, which of course are easier to distribute locally and help engagement at a local level. And sometimes that complements a website in reaching local people who may have a lot of information but don't necessarily go poking around the internet
mhm,
just in case a place of interest has been registered there. That
mhm.
helps if you live there, of course. It's a lot easier for me to pop down to the local library and say, do you mind putting a few leaflets up, than it is for Alex in New Zealand to wander over to Buckinghamshire and ask them to do the same.
Exactly. And exactly. And in fact, that's a great example of bimodal, in the sense of always looking at different ways to be, who are you trying to reach? What are the tools you're trying to use to reach them? How do they know someone's trying to reach them?
Yeah.
um, and breaking that down, it's like what we do across the board with Projectkin, in looking at the different ways that media is not only media in all its forms, from documents and photographs to artifacts and everything else, and how you are capturing them. I feel like I had this aha moment to realize that a photograph is a moment in time captured by a camera through chemical and or electronic means, that is then stored on paper, traditionally, if not metal, and then today we're digitizing that back in again to pixels as backups. That's it. I have this funny photo that I often hold up, which is a photo of a woman in kind of Quaker dress. Well, it
Uh-huh.
is a Quaker ancestor of mine. um, but the curiosity that I didn't know to look for a long time is, why is that a positive print in this kind of a frame? So, no, this was a daguerreotype frame. And my grandfather, who was a photographer at the
Yeah.
turn of the last century, did a photographic scan of it. He took a camera on a
A
stand and took
photographer.
a picture of it in an enlarger, and then made a print of it, and then stuffed it back into the envelope. And in the idea in which it now of course I've scanned those, but now I've got lots of different ways to be able to look at something and share it, and then reinterpret it from a historical perspective. Understand now, in that case, I'm fascinated by the migration of
Yeah.
the Quakerism in particular in England, and its historical context in England and the civil wars going on in England at the time, England and Scotland, and then folks coming over to America and what that had to do with, and then the battles among people with that environment, then fractioning up into the different parts of our history. That goes not just to our history, but certainly Canadian history as well. So much to explore.
Well, I think I mentioned before, we have a 17th century, mid 17th century Quaker burial ground about a quarter of a mile up the hill. So
Right.
we have contacts with early Quaker history as well. We're 8 miles down the road from Pendle Hill, where, of course, Fox had his revelation. So,
Right.
yeah,
I've only begun to scratch. That's Spring Hill is your
that's
area,
right.
right?
Yes, well done. Yeah,
I've only begun to scratch the surface. Jude Rhodes, who
yeah.
is an active member for us, and I know in the Yorkshire area where I
Yes,
know my ancestors, some of my ancestors came from, and it's just a to me fascinating area that I've only yet begun, and it sounds like a great trip
come
someday.
and see it. We'll take you for coffee. Well, not all at once,
I
perhaps,
I'd
but sure.
love that. So, with
um,
that, maybe we take a quick reminder to everyone that you will be our star for our program at a little bit better hour for you. It is at what we call our Atlantic time, which instead of translating it into so many different times, I now say projectkin.org/Atlantic time.
Atlantic time.
Atlantic hyphen time, and that way you look it up, and it takes you to my world time buddy who will tell you what time it is in your region, just like I did for this one, which is chat time.
Yeah, it's just
Gets
before
me
tea
out of
time rather than
trouble.
just before bedtime.
Exactly, especially in the spring and fall when everybody jumps and falls back on time and we all get confused. So we'll find a way. Again, thank you so much, Janet. I will include the link to this book, the links to the Society for One Place Studies, and everything else in the show notes, and get that out to our membership just as soon as I can on this rainy Sunday afternoon here in California. It's which, by the way, we're very happy for this rain. We're in Northern
Yeah,
California, far from the fires, which have been
that's been
just
dreadful.
devastating. Yeah.
That's been awful.
So thank you all so much. I very much appreciate your fine participation and look forward to your jumping on in to the dialogue. You're welcome to start the dialogue now with questions, and we can lead it up to the program on Thursday.
Thank you for your welcome. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye bye now.
Bye.